Let's go macro and then micro. You know that's how I like to start. How do you feel about Sean Payton constantly bringing over these New Orleans people? I mean, literally, Monday we get a front office guy, Tuesday we get a coach. It does feel to some extent like, hey, these guys all won a lot together. Let's reunite the band. And to some extent, it feels like, are you just hiring your buddies?
Well, I mean, listen, people like to work with those who they know what they can expect from, right? So I get it from that stance. But as far as, like, what are you trying to you're recreating the Saints here? And when you left there, what were the Saints when you left?
They weren't very good. Once Drew Brees went away, they kind of became what the Broncos were.
And then you nailed it right there. When you lost the quarterback, which we still don't have here, we don't know what they're going to do at that position. I don't know that it matters who you bring in here. You got to find that guy. So, if I could have Drew Brees, then I would love it.
Yeah, if you want to bring in old Saints, let's bring in Drew. Yeah. I'm cool with that. The latest addition is Pete Carmichael. Got fired as the Saints offensive coordinator a couple weeks ago. This is coming from Jeff Duncan, longtime New Orleans writer. You'll remember that Jeff Duncan and Sean Payton are like tight. So if Jeff Duncan reports it, it's true. Again, Pete Carmichael, and guys, he was the offensive coordinator in New Orleans forever. I mean, he was there through the 2023 season, started in 2009. So this isn't like one of those, he had a cup of coffee with Sean and he coached his QBs for 2 years. No, this guy's been the OC in New Orleans the last 14 years, was there with Sean starting all the way back in 2006 when Sean first started. The report is senior offensive assistant for the Broncos. Sounds like Joe Lombardi, the current OC, is going to keep his job. So let's react specifically to Carmichael. How much can this help the Broncos in 2024? A guy who's been an OC the last 14 years coming to Denver in a new role.
I'll go back to me, it matters about the players. I mean, this guy could be phenomenal, X's and O's on the whiteboard, right? But if you don't have the personnel to execute what you want to do, and we've been going over it. You have, I guess, Jerry Jeudy's back, yeah? They're going to keep that guy.
We think.
He's back. Courtland's gone. Basically said goodbye. Your quarterback's gone. I think at running back you still have a little bit left to be desired there. The tight end room is in shambles. We have no idea what's going on there. You have a lot of offensive linemen, which I guess that you paid a decent amount of money to, which is a good start. But as far as, players that are going to make the difference when it matters the most, where are they?
Yeah, and those are all good points, and you're speaking to me. And we'll talk about the players and the personnel that Carmichael will have to work with and advise here as senior offensive assistant. But Chello, he also got fired this year after putting up 402 points, which was 9th in the NFL. So, yeah, they lost Drew Brees, but he still had a top 10 scoring offense this season in New Orleans. Dennis Allen survives. They broom the whole offensive staff out. I'm actually a little higher on this than I think you are. I think the more good-minded brains you can bring in, and I know I butchered that. Good-minded brains doesn't make sense. But more smart people. Let's start with that. The more smart people you can bring in. I mean, again, this isn't some 29-year-old who had a cup of coffee. 14-year offensive coordinator, was there as Payton's right-hand man through all the Brees years. Kind of surprisingly gets the axe. It's not every day you see a top 10 OC get fired.
Yeah.
And immediately it sounds like Sean is going to scoop him up. So I get that you want to focus on the players. And, of course, we have to focus on the players. But on the surface, if we're just being fair, I have been a little annoyed of every guy who gets let go in New Orleans gets a job in Denver. I think Pete Carmichael is deserving of this job in Denver. I actually think this is a good hire today by Sean Payton.
Listen, I have nothing to guy. I don't even know the guy.
But you know his work. You've watched the Saints the last 15 years.
And if I could have Alvin Kamara here, and hell, even Derek Carr.
Yeah.
You want to swap offenses? Sure. Bring it. I'll take all the stats you just laid out of what he did last year and still basically unexpectedly got the can after being a top 10 offense. I'd love all of that. What I struggle with is you are like, this thing has been broken down to the bear right here in Denver. Are you right? Are you with me?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know the most important position in all of professional sports is quarterback. I have no idea what we're going to do there. If it's a young guy and you have time to build it up, then yes, I'm 100% on board. But I also don't want to mortgage the entire draft and what they're going to be able to surround said quarterback with if you don't have any talent with him. I mean, I thought even if you would have kept it right now and you just brought in a quarterback, I would have been a little bit more happy about it. But we have no idea. You don't have a quarterback. You lost your most productive, especially in the red zone, as far as scoring receiver.
Not officially yet, we think, but most likely.
Right. I'm just going off of, I'm reading the cues. And when you put out something that Courtland did, you don't expect to be here next year.
No, I wouldn't expect Courtland to be back because we've been over it. The household names that Broncos country knows, a lot of them are going to have to go to be able to absorb this Russell Wilson cap hit. Courtland's just one. I'd be surprised if Justin Simmons ever plays a snap again for the Denver Broncos. I would not be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked if Garett Bolles is a casualty this year. You look at the money they owe him versus the dead cap, they can save like $16 million there. So, again,
plus you got to throw PS2 in. If they're going to move up to where they want to be or where you think they need to get to, that name is thrown in every trade scenario.
Yeah, but he's not a money guy. Sutton, Simmons, Bolles would all be financial. Surtain would be talent acquisition, specifically draft pick capital.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So he's in the conversation, but I think for a different reason. I think long story short here is that, remember, yesterday they added Cody Rager, who was a college scouting director, who's now going to be the VP of player personnel, which, by the way, real quick, I know we didn't do the show together last night. You were with Danny Williams, but I wanted to get this out of my system. I found it funny that people said, oh, George Payton hired this Cody Rager cat. Like, George Payton didn't hire anyone. Sean Payton hired Cody Rager to say, hey, go work with George. Go give him some help.
If anything, be careful because that dude's right on your heels.
Oh, if any, Sean Payton's going, Cody Rager, Denver Broncos GM 2025.
Can I get the same production out of this guy as the one who made some of the, most questionable moves in maybe Broncos history?
So 2 days in a row. Cody Rager yesterday, Pete Carmichael today. It's interesting, man, that, we hear nothing about staff changes. And yet now we're hearing about additions, but not subtractions. And in some extent, there's no salary cap for coaches. You can hire as many people as you want. But in others, if you're Greg Penner, you got to be looking like, okay, we're bringing all these dudes in. I've got the capital to pay them. We know, richest owners in the NFL. But at what point are we going to start hearing about the subtractions, I guess, would be my next question, too, because there's only so many times you can add before someone at the very tippy top goes, okay, who are we taking out? And that will be interesting to see, too. As we know, news is leaking very slowly out of Dove Valley these days, but in the last 48 hours, we have 2 new hires, no subtractions, at least not yet.
I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of Brian Zanders. When John got the position, and obviously he was elevated even higher than Rager is right now, but it's like, hey, we'll see how next year goes, and if they need to have a fall guy, it looks like they already have one in place.
Yeah, reset that story for maybe some of our newer Broncos fans. So that was right after the McDaniels debacle, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And they bring in John, and Zanders is still the GM. But within, was it literally 12 months? Zanders was out, and John basically had full control.
John got hired, and he kept Brian Zanders on basically to kind of show him the ropes. His famous quote that day was, I don't know what I don't know. And what happened in that 1 year was he had Brian Zanders help him kind of understand what his roles were, what he needed to be doing, and he took that, and then once that year was gone, so was Brian Zanders.
What's funny is we've all, not we all, but a lot of us have been in that role where you kind of feel like you're training your replacement. That's not just a sports thing. That's a real life thing across all industries where you feel like, so they're asking me to show this guy how it's done so they can kick me out the door as soon as he knows. You wonder if that's the case for Rager. And I'm not going to lie, Chello, it crossed my mind with Joe Lombardi today too, because he doesn't call plays last year as an OC. He's not Justin Outten, because Justin Outten kind of got mocked, maybe unfairly so, because he was on Nathaniel Hackett's staff, but a lot of people wondered what Outten did, and then, of course, when Outten took over play-calling duties late in the season, it actually got better, so maybe he was more talented than people gave him credit for. But I don't think Joe Lombardi is sitting there today loving reading this news from Jeff Duncan that Pete Carmichael's coming to Denver.
Well, what's the hierarchy? Does it go Sean, Carmichael, then Lombardi? Because that's the way it seems to me, or that's the way from my perception is that that's what's going on here, and that he's going to have to answer to him. And if things aren't going well, say early in the season, that's an easy move to make. I mean, you saw what happened in Buffalo this year when they got rid of Dorsey.
Yeah.
I mean, those kind of things, nobody wants to have a job where you're constantly worried about if you're going to have the job the next day.
Right. And if you're Lombardi, is it one of those things where it's hiring season across the league. And yeah, a lot of these positions are getting, scooped up, but that's a lot of head coaching positions. We've even, in the last few hours, there's been coordinator movement, and Ben Johnson staying in Detroit, and the Texans QB coach is staying there to work with Stroud, even though he's getting OC looks, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if you're Joe Lombardi, you might be calling your agent tonight going, do we need to look around, dude? Because I may see the writing on the wall here. Again, if you're just joining the show, the Broncos are hiring Pete Carmichael, who was the offensive coordinator for the last 15 years in New Orleans. It's easy to say, oh, he's just going to be a senior offensive analyst or whatever title you want to give him. To your point, Chello, that reeks of Pete Carmichael's pretty much going to be the Denver Broncos offensive coordinator in 2024, regardless of what the title officially says.
Yeah, I think and now I'm probably more excited for this offseason than I have been in a while. And it's not because of like, oh, this is what we have. I'm just looking – I want to see the plan play out. Because obviously over a we could question whether there's a plan or how they're going to get to the end result as much as we want, but it seems like they have a plan in place. And whether you believe what Cecil said yesterday about all the rumblings are that Denver's not going to go shyly into trying to get a quarterback. They're going to push all into the center of the table and try and go get their guy. You believe that or not? I'm just interested to see, they're moving chess pieces now. What's the end result going to be? And is it going to be something that's going to invigorate and energize Broncos country enough to not have a year? Because you struggle next year, and I'm telling you, that's when you start seeing the stuff you don't want to see, especially as an owner.
Apathy.
Yes. And after this long of a drought of a winning season, a 500 season, or even being in playoff contention when it really matters the most, this town, we saw it for a short amount of time, and you saw the move that had to be made then. How long until, and I asked you that last week, I believe, when does the clock start ticking? And I think that would be it.
Yeah, I do too. And let's go back to Cecil's report. You mentioned that. He's saying that there are folks in the scouting community, which we know Cecil is the best at, the most connected at. He's been doing it for over 20 years. He writes great stuff at denversports.com. Cecil knows these scouts. He knows scouts from every team in the NFL. And there is a belief that the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton are going to move up to get their guy. And Mace, Andrew Mace, and Cecil Lammey, both at the Senior Bowl now. They were at the Shrine Bowl. Mace is going to have a QB report later. But moving up, Chello, feels like it can only be one of three guys: Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels. Now, could Bo Nix have a great week this week, and all of a sudden it's, hey, we got to get from 12 to 10 to get Bo? Maybe. But no one's going to move up top three unless it's one of those three names I mentioned. You said, believe Cecil or not. I tend to believe him. What are the handicapping, or how do you handicap this, that the Broncos will move up based on what Cecil is saying and what the belief around the league is?
Listen, man, I'm all in our fan Broncos insider, Mike Kliss. So he said he hadn't heard that, and then he also came out with nine players, right? 9 quarterbacks that they might target in the offseason.
He works at 9 News. So,
yes, there you go.
There's the connection. By the way, real quick on that, really brave article from Mike about his health struggles this year, and I just want to shout him out because he went through a situation, suffered a heart attack in the middle of the season, wrote about that at 9news.com, got to the hospital just in time. So we're glad everything worked out, Mike. We're thinking of you. But anyways, yes, nine candidates for the Broncos. Maybe he wants to try to work at Channel 4. His articles would be half the work.
Yeah, and some of the names that are on that list, I mean, there's nothing that's going to excite you, really. I mean, it's names that we've all brought up and talked about. I just, if you can't move up, and say you just can't because they don't have enough to offer to get to where they need to be to select one of those top 3 quarterbacks, is there another one other than Bo Nix that intrigues you?
Well, here's the thing. I think with Penix, it's becoming more and more apparent that you could probably get him in the second round. And the Broncos don't have a second-round pick, but it wouldn't be the end of the world to trade back into the second round. And then with McCarthy, man, I can't believe I'm even saying this because Broncos country might riot, but on draft night, can you imagine if they're at 12 and we hear Broncos are on the clock, but there's been a trade, and they traded back to, say, 26 because they know they can get McCarthy at 26 and get a second-round pick.
Stay away from 26. That's where Paxton was selected.
Okay, 27.
There you go. I'll take that.
We'll pick a new number. But so you asked me, is there anyone besides the big 3 and Knicks that intrigue me?
Listen, man,
he's at the right price. Like McCarthy at 27 is a heck of a lot more enticing than McCarthy at 12 if I can add 2 more draft picks. Yes.
Listen, I know he doesn't have the flash and pizzazz that everyone's talking about. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and even Drake May for that matter at that point. And Bo Nix is one that's getting talked about a little bit more, and we'll see how he does this week. That may increase even a little bit more. There are attributes that I love about McCarthy, though. I mean, the kid grew up playing hockey. He has, like, hockey superstitions. Didn't want to touch a rose until he won the Rose Bowl. A lot like our Avalanche or any hockey team doesn't want to touch a trophy until they get Lord Stanley. All he's done is he lost one game at Michigan.
Yeah,
and
that
it wasn't like
TCU playoff game.
Yes, and that was a highly competitive game. It was a shootout, basically.
It wasn't the offense's fault.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not that guy that's going to dig in and tell you draft stock and whatnot. But those are attributes. If you're telling me you're getting a winner who doesn't really know how to lose and he kind of does it the right way, I wouldn't be heartbroken if that was a selection.
Yeah, but what about at 12? When you feel like you could get him in the back half of the
not
first.
Unless, I mean, does he go to the combine and then just, like, wow people? And we've seen people that have been combine just phenomenons, right? I mean, one that comes to mind, I think, is Aaron Curry, a linebacker out of Wake Forest.
Oh, you're going in the way back here.
This dude went, I want to say it was, I'll look it up during the break, but I want to say it was top 10. And he was a linebacker out of Wake Forest. It was over a decade ago.
I was going to say, he didn't have much of a career because I haven't heard of the guy.
Yeah. Or Vernon Golston. You remember that name?
I remember Vernon Golston. I do.
I mean, some of these guys are just combine phenomenons, and they go and they get selected. And quarterbacks can do the same. In fact, quarterbacks can jump up even higher. I mean, Baker Mayfield, his year, until he went to the Senior Bowl, do you think he was going to go number one?
No, he jumped everyone. He jumped Darnold. He jumped Allen. He jumped Rosen. Yeah.
Yeah. He's another one, by the way, that's probably on the list.
Baker?
Yeah.
I don't think they can afford Baker. By the way, your boy Aaron Curry played 3 years for the Seahawks, 1 year for the Raiders out of the league. So, yeah, I had never heard of him. 09, 10, and 11 in Seattle, and then 2012 with Oakland. But you're right, these sort of combine darlings that can develop. I think when you look at the quarterbacks, though, all right, say they go 1, 2, 3. Say Williams, May, Daniels go 1, 2, 3 to the Bears, the Commanders, and the Patriots. Then I think the fear becomes whoever the next guy is, someone could jump you. And that's where if you're at 12 and you're Sean Payton and you're just falling in love with Bo Nix, but you got to sweat picks 4 through 11, that's not going to be fun at all. The best case scenario for this draft, Chello, is that there's a surprise in the top 3 and someone besides a QB goes off the board, because then that gives you some buffer between Daniels and the next QB off the board.
If the Bears stick, which that's what they're putting out there now, right? That they're going to stick, and all signs to point that they're going to select Caleb Williams, so then they'll have Caleb Williams and Justin Fields. Justin Fields here. Any interest?
You know, I've gone back and forth on this one I've done it on the drive before with Zach and Phil. And my gut tells me yes. My gut tells me yes on Justin Fields because, as Phil loves to point out, he hasn't had anyone to throw to except for DJ Moore this year. And he and DJ Moore had a good year together. Not a great year, but a good year together this year. And at least with Justin Fields, I don't feel like it's a recycled Joe Flacco thing where he's on the back end, or a Case Keenum thing where he's on the back end, or a Teddy Bridgewater thing where he's on the back end. I feel like I'm getting a kid who still is doing this. I know we're on radio, but he's going up, right? And with those other veterans the Broncos have brought in, it feels like all of them, you're just trying to catch lightning in a bottle. With Fields, it's like, if Sean Payton's as big a genius as he is, then he should be able to take a kid who's only been in the league for 3 years and make him into a playoff caliber, hopefully one day Super Bowl caliber quarterback. So to answer your question, I would say yes on Justin Fields.
I'm 100% with you, actually. I mean, we keep hearing about over the last week about Sam Darnold and the quarterback rehab that he's gone through. Justin Fields he's still been playing, you know, and like you said, the trajectory to me, it seems like he's starting to get it a little bit more. It's just one of those things. If you don't get one of those top 3 quarterbacks, then you're just weighing out the options of the unknown versus what you kind of already know in the league. You know, he's seen NFL defenses. He played against them the past 3 years. When you bring in a rookie quarterback, you never know what it's going to turn into.
Well, and if they take Williams, Field can be had. Like, there's this notion that, they're going to go into next year with Fields and Williams. Maybe. But if you call Chicago and you offer them a juicy enough package for Justin Fields,
oh, easily,
they're willing to part ways. I think the whole they could have Williams and Fields on the roster thing is a smokescreen.
Agreed.
I think Fields could be had at somewhat of a reasonable price. So then let me ask you this: Fields or Bo Nix?
Fields.
Fields or McCarthy?
Fields.
Fields or Penix?
Fields.
So you're telling me if you can't get one of those top three, which we don't think is realistic, that you would rather have Fields than anyone else?
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is it's not as crazy. It's equal to the Sam Darnold notion to me.
I'd rather have Justin Fields than Sam Darnold.
Listen, man.
Any day of the week.
Yeah, did Darnold go through a quarterback rehab? Yeah, I guess so. But look at the team he was with.
And you and I
look
went
at
over
the coaching staff he's with.
And we went over the stats. It's not like he did all that much.
No.
Like just because he spent a year, getting to hang out with Kyle Shanahan doesn't mean he can just do it on the field all of a sudden.
Yes.
Fields has the experience to come do it. So, yeah, I'd be much more interested in Fields than Darnold. But
I would label it like this, Will, is that you've seen Fields with talent that's lacking, and you still see flashes, right? We saw Darnold with talent that was lacking, and maybe a playbook that was way out of his realm of possibility of kind of understanding what they were trying to do. And you see the results in the two. Now, wins and losses, they're probably not that much different, but flashes, and if you ask me, who do I think would probably make it, I would lean towards Fields.
Oh, Fields has a ceiling that I don't think has quite been scratched yet. Got to remember, he's playing for the Chicago Bears. Name me a good quarterback the Chicago Bears have ever had in their history of that franchise. I mean, there's Bears fans I know that you talk to that'll say Jay Cutler is one of the best QBs they've ever had.
Well, he was.
I know. With all due respect to Jay Cutler, he shouldn't be one of the best QBs your franchise has ever had.
No. It's Cutler, McMahon. Harbaugh played there for a while. Mike Tomczak, and then Sid Luckman.
You're going a little before my time with Sid Luckman.
That's before my time. That's how long ago it is.
But I appreciate what you're getting at here, and what I'm getting at is we can't judge Justin Fields and make these grand assumptions based on 3 years in Chicago. That's not a big enough sample size that I think you could reinvent him. And I think it would be funny if Justin Fields and Pat Surtain ended up on the same team. After everything that we went through.
The one drawback that you have is the style of quarterback he plays. And that, Russell, that didn't fit here as well, and you're just getting a younger version of that in Justin Fields. Way more athletic.
A lot less wear on those tires, too.
Especially at this point in his career. But, I mean, that wouldn't be something that I'd be heartbroken to hear that, hey, that's your starting quarterback. What I don't want is what you're saying is like a Flacco-like type situation.
No.
Because that doesn't energize anyone. That's like literally, hey, this year's a wash. Come watch us next year.
Yeah, the Broncos are going into camp with Taylor Heineke and Jarrett Stidham. That's a good way to get dozens and dozens of people to come sit on the hill.
As a backup.
Hey, we want you to help us grow our Denver Sports YouTube channel if you don't mind. Please check us out on YouTube. You can like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video.